Welcome to the Secret History Channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one.
In 1940, during the Battle of Britain, a German Messerschmitt Bf 110 made a forced landing near King's Cross Station in London. The incident took place amid the intense air operations of that year, when enemy aircraft frequently flew over the British capital. During World War II, St. Pancras Station in London was targeted by several air raids, the worst recorded in May 1941, when 5 bombs struck the structure. In 1968, during the Vietnam War, United States Army soldiers known as tunnel rats were assigned to explore underground tunnels built by the enemy. A photograph of one of these soldiers shows the moment he inspects a hole between floors, about to descend without knowing what he would find below. In 1937, the famous Selfridges department store in London was lavishly decorated to celebrate the coronation of King George VI, marking one of the city's most festive moments. In the late 19th century, photographs like this recorded women in China who had undergone the practice of foot binding, a tradition that began in childhood and consisted of compressing the feet with bands to keep them small. In 1936, a striking photograph captured a photographer positioned at an extremely high point on the Empire State Building in New York City, shooting images from unique angles of the cityscape. A striking photograph shows the moment when East German and West German police faced off at a border point, right after a woman hurried across the divide that separated Berlin during the early years of the Cold War. In 1945, right after the end of World War II, photographs in Berlin showed children playing on destroyed tanks that still lay scattered through the city's streets. These images contrasted the innocence of childhood with the remnants of a conflict that had left deep marks on the urban landscape and daily life. In the 1950s, Thomas Fitzpatrick took part in one of the most unusual episodes of urban aviation in New York by secretly landing a plane right on a Manhattan street, and he repeated the feat on another occasion. During World War II, waist gunners were crew members positioned on the sides of the B-17 Flying Fortress bomber, responsible for operating machine guns that defended the aircraft against air attacks. In March of 1888, New York City was hit by the so-called Great Blizzard, one of the most severe winters ever recorded in the city's history. The storm brought strong winds and built up layers of snow that reached more than 1 meter in some places, which is more than 3 feet, paralyzing transportation and interrupting communications for days. In 1945, theoretical physicist Robert Oppenheimer and United States Army General Leslie Groves were photographed together as the main leaders of the Manhattan Project, the program that developed the first nuclear weapons during World War II. In 1893, a rare photograph recorded an Atlas lion, also known as a Barbary lion, a species that lived in North Africa and is now considered extinct in the wild. Known for its dense, imposing mane that extended to the chest and shoulders, the animal was a symbol of strength and majesty in the mountainous ecosystems of Algeria and neighboring countries. At the London Olympic Games in 1908, Italian marathoner Dorando Pietri starred in one of the most famous episodes in Olympic history. After leading much of the race, he entered the stadium exhausted and disoriented, collapsing several times just a few yards from the finish line. In 1941, during World War II, a photograph captured the moment a woman kisses a soldier before his departure, symbolizing the emotional farewells that marked civilian and military life in that period. During World War II, farewell scenes among families were common and deeply moving, such as children saying goodbye to the father leaving for military service. Many of these farewells took place at train stations or ports, places where soldiers boarded for the fronts. In the 1940s, photographs of children playing help show how childhood remained present, even in a period marked by global changes and hardships. In streets, yards, and squares, youngsters invented simple games, often using improvised objects, since manufactured toys were scarce in many regions due to the war economy. In 1933, construction of the Golden Gate Bridge began in San Francisco, one of the most ambitious engineering projects of the 20th century. The bridge was planned to link the city to Marin County, spanning the Golden Gate Strait, known for strong currents and thick fog. In 1931, the Empire State Building was completed in New York City, immediately becoming one of the greatest symbols of modern architecture and American ambition. With 102 floors and more than 380 meters in height, which is more than 1,247 feet. It was the tallest building in the world for more than 40 years, dominating the city's skyline. In 1857, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, one of the most notable engineers of the 19th century, was photographed in Millwall, the setting for some of his greatest achievements. Known for his pioneering role in the Industrial Revolution, Brunel designed railways, tunnels, ships, and bridges that redefined the United Kingdom's infrastructure. In 1919, Nikola Tesla was photographed demonstrating his famous wireless lamp, an experiment that reflected his visionary research into transmitting electric power without the need for cables. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell was recorded alongside a working telephone prototype, one of the greatest milestones in modern communication. The device, still rudimentary in appearance, represented the first practical demonstration that the human voice could be transmitted electrically over distance. In 1911, During the expedition led by Robert Falcon Scott to Antarctica, a photograph recorded the Barne Glacier, one of the icy scenes explored by the British team. The mission was part of the famous Terra Nova expedition, whose main goal was to reach the South Pole and conduct scientific studies of the region. In 1954, Marilyn Monroe traveled to Korea to perform for thousands of American soldiers stationed there, in one of the most remembered tours of her career outside Hollywood. In 1974, British actor John Cleese was photographed during the filming of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, a feature that would become one of the greatest comedy classics. The film, produced by the Monty Python group, irreverently satirized the legend of King Arthur and his knights, mixing absurd humor, quick dialogue, and unexpected situations. In 1918, at the end of World War I, tanks took part in a large victory parade, marking the introduction of these machines as a fundamental part of modern military strategy. Charles-Jean Rigouleau of France stood out as one of the most versatile athletes of the early 20th century, combining careers as a weightlifter and a race car driver. At the 1924 Paris Olympic Games, he won the gold medal in weightlifting, cementing his international reputation. Suzanne Lenglen of France was one of the greatest tennis players of her generation and left a mark on the sport in the early 20th century. Over her career, she won 8 major titles in international tennis competitions and stood out at the 1920 Antwerp Olympic Games, where she earned 2 gold medals and 1 bronze. Matt McGrath, a New York City police officer and Olympic athlete, made history by winning the gold medal in the hammer throw at the 1912 Stockholm Olympic Games. At the Stockholm Olympic Games in 1912, Great Britain's national team won the gold medal in the soccer tournament by defeating Denmark in the final, repeating the feat achieved in London 4 years earlier. At the London Olympic Games in 1908, Great Britain's cycling team had an extraordinary performance, winning multiple gold medals and cementing its position as one of the sport's powerhouses at the start of the century. At the London Olympic Games, German rower Bernhard von Gaza won the bronze medal, standing out both for his performance and for his strong presence during the events. In 1928, BMW launched the Dixie, its first mass production car, marking the company's definitive entry into the auto industry. The model was based on the British Austin 7, manufactured under license, and offered an affordable, compact solution for the public of the time. In 1955, Ford unveiled the Lincoln Futura prototype, a futuristic car with bold lines developed in Italy by Ghia and conceived as a showcase for the era's experimental design. Despite its striking look, the model never entered mass production, being considered impractical for the market. In 1936, the small Rycraft scooter car was seen driving through London streets, drawing attention for its tiny size and curious design. Produced by the British company Wrightcraft, the vehicle was considered one of the smallest mass-produced cars ever, equipped with a low-power engine and intended for short urban trips. In 1905, Vauxhall Motor introduced the motorized hansom cab, considered one of the first modern taxi models, marking the transition from horse-drawn vehicles to automobiles. The BMW Isetta, produced from the 1950s, became known as one of the most iconic microcars of the post-war period. Its compact design drew attention mainly for the single front door, which opened along with the steering wheel, making getting in and out a peculiar and often uncomfortable process. In the early 20th century, the ships HMS Victoria and HMS Wellington were recorded on the River Thames in London, making a scene that highlighted the importance of the British Navy as a symbol of power and tradition. The Grapes pub, located on the banks of the River Thames in London, was rebuilt in 1723, on the same site where an older establishment dedicated to hospitality and drink had already existed. In the 1920s, the famous Scotland Yard kept a records room that impressed by the volume of documents filed by hand, reflecting the complexity of police work before computers existed. In 1925, New York City residents gathered at different spots around the city to observe a solar eclipse, with notable records made in Central Park near 72nd Street. The astronomical event drew curious crowds, many equipped with darkened glass and improvised instruments to follow it safely. Six-day bicycle races held at Madison Square Garden in New York City were among the most popular sports of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In these events, professional cyclists competed almost without stopping, taking turns or, in some cases, riding for many hours straight, while crowds packed the arena to watch. In 1895, a photograph shows a woman learning to ride a bicycle, an activity that at that time was rapidly becoming popular as a symbol of freedom and modernity. The late 19th century became known as the Golden Age of the bicycle, when the vehicle became accessible to men and women, transforming personal transportation and also influencing social change. In the 1920s, learning to swim became an increasingly common activity, driven by the growth of public recreation areas and the encouragement of health and wellness habits. In 1963, children in New York City were often seen playing on iron structures known as climbing frames, which were part of the playgrounds of the time. These pieces of equipment, often made of simple metal bars, allowed youngsters to climb, hang, and invent adventure games. In the 1950s, a curious fad called phone booth stuffing emerged, which consisted of cramming as many people as possible into a telephone booth. The practice began as a college prank and quickly spread as a challenge in different countries, turning into a kind of informal competition. In 1946, a photograph portrays a lumberjack, a figure that symbolizes the hard routine of forestry work in the post-war period. Tree felling was essential to supply construction, paper, and energy industries at a time when many countries sought reconstruction and economic expansion. In the mid-20th century, firefighters were often trained to perform emergency jumps into safety nets handled by teams on the ground, a practice recorded in training photographs. In 1928, a hairdryer model drew attention for its curious design and still early technology, reflecting the beginning of the popularization of electric devices aimed at personal care. In 1965, Clifford Roberts, head of health and safety, was photographed serving as a model in a fire safety demonstration. These presentations were common in companies and public institutions, aiming to train employees and raise public awareness about emergency procedures. In 1952, winter photographs from Idaho show the intensity of snowstorms that hit the region, covering roads, houses, and rural landscapes with thick layers of snow. The state, known for its harsh cold season, faced constant challenges related to transportation, supply, and daily family life. In 1940, records show how the price of gasoline in the United States was heavily affected by taxes, reaching about 20 cents per gallon, with most of that amount made up of government fees. In 1930, a photograph recorded a fisherman in Istanbul, Turkey, illustrating the city's strong connection to fishing and maritime trade. Situated between the Sea of Marmara and the Bosphorus Strait, Istanbul has long relied on its aquatic resources for both local food and the regional economy. In 1894, the Kuykendall Transportation Company operated stagecoaches in Cripple Creek, Colorado, a region marked by the gold rush and by the intense movement of people in search of opportunity. The stagecoaches, drawn by horses, were essential for transporting passengers. Around 1880, photographs of real cowboys show the lives of workers who operated on the vast plains of the American West, driving herds and tending cattle over long stretches. Unlike the romantic image later popularized by film, the daily life of these men was marked by physical endurance, skill with horses, and knowledge of grazing routes. In the 1880s, in South Africa, a baboon named Jack became famous for working as an assistant to a railway employee and later as an official signalman. Jack was trained by James Wide. In the mid-20th century, an unusual scene was recorded at King's Cross railway station in London, a cow being milked right on the platform. This kind of practice was tied to the transport of live animals on the railways when cattle often needed to be fed or tended during long trips.
If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.